You're listening to the Flickcast, a pop culture podcast about stuff nerds love. I am Chris Ulrich, and with me, of course, my good pal, Joe Dilworth. Joe, hello, sir.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. I think we did that much better than last week. As I might have mentioned last week, I'm always disappointed, in my own mind at least, of how I do the intro, and the last week's was sort of, I felt, subpar, but this seemed much better. So, good work.
Excellent, good. I'm glad we pointed that out to everyone. That was really good.
Kudos. Well, you know what? I believe in transparency.
No,
I believe in saying
agree.
when things don't go well. I mean, the truth is, I am generally disappointed with almost everything that I do. So it's not. I'm not a perfectionist or anything. I'm not saying that. You're disappointed with me? Thank you.
No, I'm with me.
With me. Oh, no. It's just I always feel like it could be better, and I always feel like I am somehow not doing my best work. I'm sure that's just bullshit because the show sounds pretty good and we are generally knowledgeable and it's not a terrible time. So I think it's wrong, but it's just in my mind anyway.
I kind of feel in my mind at the time, this is going great, and then I listen to it later and I'm like, was I on Ambien or something during that? What the hell? So,
what crack pipe did I hit before I started talking? Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, sometimes you sound terrible. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. It's just, don't say it sometimes. I say it's all the time. But still, I mean,
It's not. But someone told me one time, it's never as bad as you think it is. Well, sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not as bad as you think it is. It's usually either as good as it could be or even better.
I will say this. I've always hated my recorded voice, and it's obviously, and because of how the world works and physics and all that kind of stuff, it's always different than what I think it should be at the time. And then I listen to it later and I'm like, I sound like that? Holy crap, who let me near a mic? What the hell?
Yeah, why would people talk to me? It's terrible.
Right, but I sound, I think I'm like, Casey Kasem in my head because I'm like, I sound great.
Wow, Casey Kasem, America's Top 40.
And Shaggy.
Yeah, it's true.
I miss Casey Kasem. Anyway.
Oh, Shaggy. Yeah. And Scooby-Doo. He did Scooby also, right?
No, he did not do Frank Welker did Scooby in the later years. I don't know who did him originally, but maybe it was Frank. I don't know.
Frank Welker's been around, so
he
may have done. He does it all, man. That guy's a multi-talented dude. Anyway, before we go on, I should mention that we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/TheFlickcast, and you can find us on the socials. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to Apple Podcasts and give us a review or even a rating. People have been doing it. We got a few more ratings, we're hovering around 4.9, so that's pretty good.
I'm liking it.
I'm optimistic. You can't please everybody, and that's perfectly fine. I'm just very happy that people are taking the time to go rate the show. So thank you very much if you did that.
No, you're right. We can't please everyone, especially you over there. You're terrible, and I don't know why you're listening to our show. So see,
they seem like an asshole.
Yeah. And
I don't think they're ever going to be. They don't want to be happy. Is what it is.
Well, that's the one guy that's hate listening to us. So screw him. So
thanks, Phil. No, I don't even know your name. I'm just kidding. Chad? No.
That would be a Chad, I think. Yeah.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah. Anyway, so all right. So normally we would talk about shows that we've been watching and talk about episodes and things, but we're kind of in a little lull period depending on your whatever, between Marvel shows or Disney Plus shows.
Yes.
Loki's coming up soon, and What If, and we were going to talk about Bad Batch some more, but I got to be honest, it just kind of, I don't know, it's not doing it for me.
I don't
know that I'm going to spend a lot of time on it.
This week I was like, because I watch it with my oldest kid, and he came downstairs last night and was like, hey, new episode of Bad Batch, and I'm like, yeah, we'll watch it sometime this weekend. I'm not clamoring to watch it. I'll still watch it, but it's not like, ooh, I got to see it. In fact, I'm considering just kind of letting him watch it and waiting till the season is finished and then seeing if I want to watch it then. I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't know why. It just didn't. And it's not the animation or anything. And I sort of like Clone Wars. I don't know. Maybe it's just Star Wars burnout, if that's a thing. There's been too many Star Wars shows and too many Star Wars movies that sort of disappointed me. And maybe I'm just sour to the whole franchise right now. Although I did enjoy, Mandalorian. Although that's pretty different.
Yeah.
Maybe because this just seems like more of the same thing. Oh, Clone Wars. Yeah, we've already done that. Oh, this is basically a sequel to Clone Wars. Except it's about specific clones. They're not really clones. They're sort of clones, but they have special whatever. They're mutants or something. So it's like,
it's the Clone Wars X-Men. No.
Basically, yeah, they're just special. And of course, then they have the girl who's in. I mean, I don't know.
I think
I don't know. It's just not doing it for me.
for me, it's like I watched the premiere, which was like 90 minutes or whatever, and the second episode, I'm like, so. And I always have this philosophy: if you're going to continue something, or if you're going to do something else in a universe, it should be different in a way. And I don't feel there's no difference between this and Clone Wars to me. And I'm just like, well, okay, so it's just more of the same. And I wasn't like big into Clone Wars, and so I'll also preface all this with I readily accept that I'm not the target audience for either Clone Wars or Bad Batch, and that's okay. There should be Star Wars for everybody. So I think it's just a matter of going, this is not really for me, and that's okay. And I don't hate it. And I would imagine I kind of did the same thing with Clone Wars, though. If I remember, is I wasn't like clamoring to watch it when a season came out. Eventually, I did, and I was like, "Well, that was good." It kind of added to the story that I knew, but I didn't feel like, "Well, I got to rewatch that." So, yeah, I don't know. I don't hate it, but I'm not like chomping at the bit to watch Bad Batch every week, and that's okay because,
Yeah,
like I
that's
said,
okay. Yeah,
I'm not the audience for it, and that's fine.
no, and I admit that that's probably the case with me too.
Yeah,
It's just not it's not geared toward me. I haven't shown it to my kid. He's still watching other stuff, but I don't know. Maybe I'll revisit it.
yeah,
But anyway, the point that I wanted to make is that we're not going to talk about it that much, probably. Although we just spent 10 minutes talking about
sure,
it. But
exactly.
no more Bad
That's
Batch
it.
discussion
No
after
more.
this. Damn it.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, maybe we will revisit it. Wow, that was horrible.
Ooh.
I shouldn't talk at all. Apparently, perhaps we'll go back to it. How's that better? That's better. And talk about it later. But as of now, no more Bad Batch.
No.
That's it.
Bad.
Although if I was one of the Bad Batch clones, I'd probably want to be. I don't know. I like the sharpshooter guy. He's pretty cool. But anyway,
He's the bad guy now, though. So
is he?
well,
Or is he?
or is
Anyway.
he? Yes.
So instead of that, we will talk about. Did you watch the trailer for The Green Knight? By the way,
No.
I haven't seen that.
What's the Green Knight?
Oh, it's an Arthurian film starring Dev Patel and Sean Harris and Alicia Vikander. Anyway, it's basically Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, where he goes off to kill the Green Knight, which is like this scaly green monster. It looks really cool.
How
It
do
looks
I not know
really
about
bizarre.
this?
But
I love King Arthur stuff.
yeah, it was supposed to come out last year, of course,
Oh.
but it didn't because of COVID. But yeah, I like Dev Patel actually. I enjoy watching him. He does good
is
work. He was great. In
really great.
Grand Budapest Hotel. I thought he was excellent. And then of course the movie he got nominated, Slumdog Millionaire. But yeah, it looks really interesting. The trailer is crazy shit. It's actually on our website if you want to take a look at it,
Oh,
Joe.
well,
If you,
maybe I should go there more often. I don't know.
you probably should. But yeah, I was going to mention it if you had seen it or seen the trailer, but since you haven't, we can revisit it next week. But
Yes.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's one of those movies. It won't get me into the theater necessarily, but I don't know. I don't know what will, honestly. What will get you into the theater? I thought it was going to be the Scott Pilgrim reissue with the Dolby Atmos and all that stuff, and I love that movie, but I didn't go to the theater for that, even though I am quote unquote fully vaccinated, unquote. But I don't know. I it might just be Dune. That might be the only thing I'll go for.
You know,
I don't
I
what
was
about
thinking
you?
of that because next week I get my second vaccination, and I will be fully vaccinated 2 weeks after that because I'm socially responsible. And also, I want to be vaccinated and not get this horrible thing. Anyway,
There's that.
yeah, funny you should mention that because I was, researching. It's like, oh, what can I do once I'm fully vaccinated? And it's like, oh, you can be indoors without a mask, and you can be around other people that are vaccinated without a mask. And my first thought was, I can go to the movies.
That's what I thought too. I mean, the CDC says it's okay now, so we'll see.
Right.
But I'd probably still wear a mask at a movie theater
Yeah.
because why not?
Yeah.
But by the time Dune comes out, I don't know. Maybe I'll feel better about things because that's not till towards the end of the year. But I don't know. That feels like a movie that needs to be seen in a theater. And I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, I like my home theater. It's comfortable and the drinks are cheaper."
Well,
Which is
yeah,
true.
but still, I like the experience.
True.
We've discussed that.
True dat.
And Dune might
do.
be it. I think by then I might feel comfortable enough that I'll go see Dune.
Yeah. Is there anything else that would do it for you? I don't think there is for me.
Normally, if there wasn't like a plague going on, always a Marvel movie would get me to the theater, and that was something my oldest son and I would go do. Is go and see the latest Marvel movie because there was always one every 3 months or so. But
Right, you'd go see Black Widow or something. Right?
yeah, but I don't know that that's enough to make me go to the theater, and I know that makes me a bad Marvel fanboy. But
yeah, I'm interested in. I don't care that much about Fast and Furious or the. I mean, I like the next Mission Impossible. That'll be good. That's probably a movie that should be seen in the theater.
That I'd probably go see in the theater. But
but again, I'm not gonna. But Dune, I think, Dune to me seems like the one that will finally get me out of my bunker, as it were. Or Matt Reeves' Batman, I'm sure will be cool. So I'd probably go see that. But yeah, I think Dune probably is the one.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I was looking up to see if there's anything else coming up here that I was clamoring for. Oh, I suppose James Bond, whenever that comes out, if it ever does.
Yeah, that's probably true. I mean, that movie's 50 years old now, but I still want to see it.
I mean, Daniel Craig is at least 50 years old, so. But now he's got that Knives Out fuck you money, so he's good.
Speaking of that, they're adding a bunch of people to the sequel for that.
I know. Really cool. There's a meme going around or a joke going around on Twitter. It's like, look at the third person build in any movie you're watching, and they're in the Knives Out sequel.
Well, it's funny.
It's true.
I know people like to make fun of stuff and jump on the meme bandwagon, but I mean, the first Knives Out had a stellar cast too. So it's like, why is it shocking that the sequel would have a wide array of talent in it? So I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be surprising because people want to work with that Rian Johnson. So
he's pretty good. I think he's going to go places.
He's pretty good. I'm excited that Dave Bautista is going to be in it though, because I like Dave Bautista a lot. So
I know, and he's another one that's like outspoken and, but in good ways, and he's funny too. And he's a really good actor. It turns out
he is. Yeah, we talked about that before. He's turned out to be really good. Apparently, people aren't loving Army of the Dead though. But
I'm looking forward to that.
I'm gonna watch it. Yeah. The Knives Out 2 cast though is pretty cool. I mean, Batista and Ed Norton, for God's sake.
Ed Norton's always one of those when he's announced for stuff. I'm like, really, Ed?
And Catherine Hahn.
Yeah. Ed Norton is one of those that I feel like, all right, so who's he gonna fight with on set? But I think he's actually a pretty good actor, and I think a lot of his reputation is maybe not well earned, but I think it's exaggerated. But I think he's kind of like Daniel Day-Lewis. He's just an intense actor, and that comes across wrong.
I think when he was younger, he was kind of a know-it-all, from what I hear.
Yeah.
And he had done a lot of stuff, and he directed already, and he ends up like asserting his directorial, ideas into the film, and some people can handle that and some people can't, or whatever. Or if it's a strong director, they already know maybe he doesn't feel like he needs to do that. So I think it just depends on the director. But I don't know that. I mean, I don't know. Rian Johnson's probably not going to take any shit. No. Maybe he will. I don't know. He seems like a guy who's got a firm ego. So I'm not too worried about him.
I will say, as much as I love Mark Ruffalo and have enjoyed his Bruce Banner and Hulk, I'm still disappointed that Ed Norton didn't continue as Bruce Banner, because I thought that
Ruffalo is
really
so good as Bruce Banner, though. I always pictured Bruce Banner as a fucking like ruffled sort of nerd, and he's got that ruffled nerd thing perfect. I mean, he lives that life 24/7. It's like he is Ruffalo, and Ruffalo is him. No, I thought he was great. Ed Norton to me always seemed like, as good an actor as he is, I always feel like he was. What's the word? I don't know. He felt like he was above the material, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Well, he did in interviews. I mean, I think that's kind of what got him fired, because I think he insisted on having control and say so on the direction. Although at the time, now that I remember it, it seemed like he did the movie, and you're right, he felt that he was above it, and so he's like, I'm going to mouth off about this so they'll fire me because I don't really want to continue on this.
Well, he did have a contract, but they got rid of him. Yeah, so whatever. I mean, that's fine. He didn't have a good experience. He didn't want to do a superhero movie. He still got the money. He still got paid. So and he's been in some sort of crappy movies, but he's been in a lot of good ones too. And that's fine. The world needs Ed Nortons just as much as they need Mark Ruffalo's. So absolutely. I think. I mean, if they need anybody, I'm just saying. Actors are in the hierarchy of needs, probably not as high as they think they are. But
yes,
I think Ruffalo is a great Bruce Banner.
Yeah, absolutely.
And here's a rumor, and I don't know if it's true, but here's something that I heard through the grapevine,
Ooh,
and I know people who know people.
right.
He was originally supposed to be in that movie as Bruce Banner and the Hulk
Really?
instead. Yeah, that's what they were trying to go for, and for some reason it didn't work out. Or he was on the list, or was being considered, or was like maybe
Huh.
even a second choice. But he
Okay.
was definitely considered. But then Norton became available or something, so they grabbed him because he had more buzz. But then, whatever. I don't know if that's true, but it's just something I heard. Oh, and I also want to mention Janelle Monáe is
Oh,
in
yes.
Knives Out too. So I wanted to mention that who's
She
awesome.
is quite good. Yes.
She's really good. And if you've never seen the movie that she was in, hold on, I'm going to find it because I totally forgot the name. Hidden Figures.
Yes.
That is a fucking
That is a
fantastic film.
must-see movie. It's so
except
good.
except for the sort of, I don't know, what's the word, like the white savior thing. I hate to use that term. And
Yeah.
of course she's in Moonlight as well, but the Kevin Costner character in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that person actually existed. I don't know, and I didn't read the book. I should have probably, but
Even
it's like that person.
so, it's still
He just
yeah.
came in. I understand you, and I will give you the break that you need. And not that Kevin Costner's not a good actor, and I enjoy seeing him in the movies, but it's like, I don't know,
No,
the
I
kind
get
of
it.
guy who like had to, you know what I mean? He had to spearhead the whole thing because they couldn't have done it on their own,
Right.
which they probably
Exactly.
did. So
Yeah.
here's another thing that I didn't know, and then we'll get to what we're going to talk about today is our favorite science fiction films.
Woohoo!
But yeah, because we're going to talk about favorites. But one of the things that I did not realize, speaking of Hidden Figures and NASA and all that stuff, so you're familiar with the actor, musician, YouTube star Jack Black?
I've heard of him. Yes,
Have you heard
I
of
have
him?
heard of him.
Uh,
Yes.
did you know that his mom was a NASA scientist?
That I did not know. Really?
So the story is that his mom, Judith Love Cohen,
Oh.
who was pregnant with him at the time, she was an electrical engineer who worked on the Minuteman. I say she was. Oh, she did pass away. I'm sorry.
Oh.
So she was an electrical engineer and who worked on the Minuteman missile, the Hubble telescope, and a bunch of other stuff. So basically, the story is, and for the Apollo program too, she was giving birth to Jack in the hospital and also solving like navigation problems for the Apollo mission at the same time. So
Seriously? That's
yeah,
funny.
badass. Yeah, I just wanted to shout that out. That I did not know that, but I found it out recently, and I think that's cool. So I think that the women and other people who don't get as much credit. Like we were talking about For All Mankind last week. I think there was a lot more characters, a lot more women in the space program that don't get their due because it seems like a big
Oh,
boys
yeah.
club. And there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that did stuff. I mean, it's just not just a team of white dudes who did everything. So
Oh, yeah,
although it probably was
absolutely.
a lot of white dudes. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
anyway, I
Anywho.
just wanted to bring that up.
Yes.
So science fiction movies are very, very important to me. I have enjoyed science fiction since I was a boy, a long time ago, and I have a lot of favorites, but I kind of have a few favorites. So maybe we'll just talk about those. Do you have a favorite that you want to start with, or should I start?
Yeah. I have. I'll say right off the bat, I have a huge soft spot for a lot of late '60s, early '70s, mid '70s sci-fi movies because the '70s
Sure,
is kind of when I came of age, and obviously I didn't.
so to speak.
So, well, grew up, and I didn't go
Yeah.
to, well, maybe not even grew up, but I didn't obviously at a very young age go to the movies as often as I do now or at all. And so, really, my only outlet for absorbing any kind of movies, especially sci fi movies, was TV. And of course, a lot of '60s and '70s movies were on TV at the time. There was no DVD,
Sure.
there was no videotape and stuff like that, at least in my house. So I have a huge, huge soft spot for those. So I would say, like, if I was going to pick one at random, because it's hard to pick one that is like the favorite, but if I was going to pick one at random, I would say like one of the earliest ones I remember watching on TV is Logan's Run, which like blew my little mind at the time. Not little, I guess I was probably like 8 or 9 when I finally saw it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
So things like in those vein, Logan's Run, Planet of the Apes, that kind of stuff was a lot of fun to me because they were it was interesting to me because they were things that I enjoyed for the action and adventure element at the time. But then as I got older and started rewatching them again because they were favorites, I started getting the subtext and kind of the message that was being said in them, because that is, that's something I kind of feel in a way has been left out of modern sci-fi movies, especially things that didn't have like a book as a source material, that it's more spectacle than meaning. And by that I say that all of the 50s and 60s sci-fi books for the most part had some sort of commentary on society or humanity, or really digging into,
or how bad communism is.
right, exactly. And you know even the movie translations of those things kept some of that, especially because it was like, ooh, hey, we can make Star Trek is a great example. We can say things about slavery and communism and things like that and make it look pretty and have explosions, and people will be like, ooh, that's fun. So I feel like a lot of early sci-fi movies kept that, even maybe some of the ones that were not from books.
Sure.
And I think some of that has been lost. So all of that is to say, those kind of movies are kind of my ones that, if I'm flipping around, which I don't anymore, but if I, in the past when I was flipping around on TV and it's like, oh, look, Logan's Run's on, I have to watch this now.
Yeah.
But I would say from that era, maybe my favorite of all time is, and I know you think I'm going to say Star Wars, and I'm not. I'm going to say
No.
The Black Hole.
Really? The Black Hole?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm sure, like you, as you said, my first exposure to sci-fi would have been, books probably,
Well, yes,
but also
of course.
maybe even concurrently with that would have been television, because as I might have mentioned on the show many times, is that we moved around some when I was a kid. So the one constant on TV was I'd always turn on the TV and there'd be Star Trek.
Right.
So that was my first sort of like, oh, Star Trek is awesome. That was the first like big thing that I was into, was Star Trek. Although I'd watched other things, other like monster movies, like Godzilla movies and all that kind of stuff. But that didn't happen probably till we moved closer to Los Angeles, because Los Angeles had a TV network, Channel 13, which and Channel 5, which I could get with my antenna, because back in the day you had to have an antenna on your TV, kids.
Yes.
So I could pick those up, and they'd show like Godzilla, monster movie Saturdays or whatever, and then the Kung Fu weekend and things like that. So I got Bruce Lee movies and Kung Fu movies, and I got monster movies with spaceships and rockets and sci-fi stuff. So, but Star Trek definitely was the first sort of foray into that. And of course, then I ended up wanting to watch the Star Trek movies and all that. But, let's be honest, Star Wars was sort of the big catalyst for everything. 'Cause
Sure,
that was,
sure.
you see a trailer for that during another movie or something. I don't know. I've always liked the movies, and my parents were always kind enough to indulge me and take me to the movies. Probably movies I shouldn't have seen as a kid because they were probably too adult for me. But we used to go to the movies a lot. Probably, also because it was a cheap thing to do, I guess. You could entertain 3 people for very little money back then. So I think the movies were like $1 each back then or something, but maybe even less. So we would go, and then I'm sure I saw a trailer for Star Wars, and I went, "What the fuck is that?" In my
Right.
8-year-old mind. So that was a big deal. Although I will tell you that if I'm thinking about my favorite science fiction movies, Star Wars is not my favorite science fiction movie.
Right. See? Yeah, exactly.
Interesting, right?
Yep.
What do you think? What do you think it is?
Well, so here's what I think about that, and I've not spent.
It's not a trick. It's not a trick
Oh,
question.
what
It's a
your
punch
movie
question.
is? Oh, okay.
Empire Strikes Back, I think, is my
okay.
favorite sci-fi
All right,
movie.
all right.
I'm just saying. It's also my favorite Star Wars movie too. Sorry, George Lucas, but
So
and happy birthday, George.
So here's the thing, and this is probably going to be unpopular, but as much as Star Wars blew me away at the time, there were other movies that I had seen before then that I think had an equal impact on me, because I don't know if I'm going to explain this right. Star Wars, as big as it was, and as big as its legacy has become, wasn't the Star Wars phenomenon then. At least to me.
No,
I mean, it was just like,
it
oh,
was
here's
a
another
movie.
cool movie. And yeah, I want to see it multiple times. But like, say, Planet of the Apes or any other movie like that before then, if I had had the opportunity to see that multiple times in the theater, totally would have.
Oh no,
So,
Planet of the Apes is awesome. Yeah.
so it's obviously something that has lasted and had a lasting impact. And I don't think I understood and realized it at the time what it was. And many people didn't, but adults were probably like, this is game changing. For me as a kid, it was like, this is yet another really cool movie, and hey, my mom wants to take me to the theater a bunch of times to see it. But honestly, once it was out of the theater and I didn't well, that's not true too, because I consumed the comic books, but I did that with anything that was sci-fi or a movie related
Yeah.
comic book. So it was like, it was one of yet another great movie that I saw that I really loved. And by virtue of it having sequels and various other things over the years and continuing, I mean, if, Tron or The Black Hole had equally had great sequels and comic book continuations and stuff like that, those have just as much chance of becoming something I'm equally obsessed with now as Star Wars. So
Sure. Well, I mean, the black hole probably only was able to be greenlit because of Star Wars. But I
right,
mean, if you think about it, this was before the internet. This was before anything,
right,
and the only time you could really get the idea that Star Wars was some giant phenomenon was watching the news. And what kid watched the news back then?
right,
It's like, who the fuck cares about the news? So you'd see reports of people lined up at the Chinese theater or something. What are you waiting for? I'm waiting for Star Wars, baby. I didn't know about the fandom
no,
around Star
yeah, no,
Wars until later. But
yeah,
what I did know was Star Trek fandom because
oh yeah,
I convinced my parents to take me to a Star Trek convention when I was a kid. And this was probably before Star Wars came out. We went to the LA Convention Center to my first Star Trek convention. And my dad, to his credit, he did not care about Star Trek, but he went and waited in line with me and let me wander around, which I thought was nice.
right,
But that's what you do for your kids, I guess. But yeah, that was my first idea that, hey, maybe this is something, that people care about. And plus, that was after, I mean, I didn't see Star Trek in its first run because I was not even,
sure, yeah, me
almost
either,
not even born then.
yeah,
So it would have been already in reruns at that point. But so this show, I think in a lot of ways, the fan base and the phenomenon of Star Trek was almost bigger than Star Wars because they basically resurrected an entire
yeah,
franchise just by
yeah.
by writing into your whatever. So
When I was
yeah, that was
already
my
watching Star Trek and reruns well before Star
yeah,
Wars, so yeah, no,
yeah.
and
And going to Comic-Con too, back when Comic-Con was in a
man, that
hotel
would
in
have been
San
cool.
Diego. So
And I
yeah,
know, like, Star Wars was like on every magazine and all that kind of stuff at the time.
right.
But then, like, a year later, so was Superman the movie, and then a year after that, so was Star Trek the motion picture. So that to me also was not an indication of this is something special. And just being like, I'll watch anything that has, space guns and spaceships in it. It still didn't resonate that this was, again, because I was not the movie nerd that I am today. So there was no like, this is a game changer, and this is
Right.
but Battlestar Galactica, even when that came out, that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Star Wars. But that
Right.
wasn't the thought in my mind. It was like, Battlestar Galactica, this thing is really cool. And it's possible that, and I'm actually quite confident that because of Star Wars, it was like, I need more space movies with spaceships and having fights in space and stuff like that. Because I mean, a
Sure.
lot of the sci-fi movies before that, like I said, were think pieces like Omega Man, Soylent Green, Andromeda Strain, stuff like that. That was like, you know,
Yeah.
they didn't have money for those, so it's like, well, here's some buildings that have fallen down. Let's shoot our post-apocalyptic movie here, right? So it was, and there were no like laser beams and spaceships and stuff like that, but they were really good
Well,
movies.
yeah,
So
yeah. Those movies were cool because they were kind of like, because everyone was disillusioned in the '70s, right? Because
right,
of Watergate
right,
and Nixon and all that. So that kind of anti-establishment, like Soylent Green or like Omega Man, you're talking about like Silent Running, another one. The world has been destroyed, so now all the greenery is in these little spaceships that go up in space, and all you got is the one weirdo with the robots keeping the plants alive. So that kind of thing, ecological death. And of course, 2001
Yeah.
came out.
Yeah.
Although I don't think I was interested in 2001. I don't think I saw that until after I saw Star Wars. But it's interesting if you think about something like Star Wars. Star Wars was a very optimistic movie. Like the rebels win and things are going to looking up and we defeat evil.
Right.
Whereas most of the sci-fi movies and whatever up until that point for a long time had been very cynical, right?
Yeah.
Especially
exactly.
in the 70s.
Yeah.
And of course, then you get like something like Star Wars where it's whatever, and then E.T. comes out right after that, and E.T.'s like, oh, happy alien, and then you get something like Alien where the alien is destroying everybody. So it's like,
Exactly.
come on, people.
Well, you had
So what's
Close
it going to be?
Encounters and stuff like that. I think.
Yeah, optimistic view. Like Spielberg's like, aliens are good, and then you have Ridley Scott, aliens will burst out of your chest and destroy you.
I think as a kid too, I never made the distinction. I didn't care about genre. I just liked
Right.
movies. I mean, one of the, I remember every year the local TV station would play West Side Story and Wizard of Oz, and that was like, those were great movies. I got to stay up late and watch those when those aired on TV because, again, we didn't have videotape and, streaming services and stuff like that. It was your only opportunity to see those movies. And I thought those were great movies, and it wasn't like, oh, well, that's a musical, and Star Wars, that's a sci-fi movie. To me, it was just movies, monster movies, any movies. If the story and the characters resonated with me, I love them. So again, that was like not something I made a distinction of. It's like, oh, Star Wars is a game-changing sci-fi movie. I was just like, this is a really cool movie,
Right.
and I really like it, and I like drawing the characters. And then a couple years later, I really like the Black Hole, and I like drawing Vincent and Old Bob. So.
Yeah, it was definitely a different kind. Well, it was very Disney, right? So
Yeah, and then Close Encounters, that was a fairy tale kind of movie, and that was like
Right.
that to me was also a hugely impactful to me movie because I'm just like, that was a big craze in the '70s as UFOs and aliens visiting us and stuff like that, and here's a movie that was like, here's how it could really happen and kind of thing, and it was like,
Right.
whoa, that was great.
Then there's that one guy I saw Bigfoot once too. So
Exactly.
I love Close Encounters, man. The great thing about movies like that is like, Spielberg in general is like he's very optimistic, right? The world may be crumbling, and Spielberg grew up on movies of the 70s,
Yep.
and so he had seen the cynicism of of politics and of Watergate and all that Nixon stuff and everything in Vietnam and all that, the terrible things, and so he tried to make stories with E.T. and with Close Encounters and stuff like benevolent aliens who are coming to help us or who are good, and and then people make movies where they're not. But
Right.
I think it's also interesting because of all the environmental things that kind of flow through a lot of movies of the 70s. Like what happens in Omega Man? It's like it's a plague that kills everybody, right?
Right.
And turns them into albinos or something, which is wrong, but not according to the book. But
Yeah.
and then Silent Running, like I said, with Bruce
Yeah.
Dern is out there with the robots. Like the world is being destroyed.
Conservation.
Sean Green.
Yes.
The world is being destroyed.
Yes.
It's environmental stuff like that, which was big then. And so, and then you get Alien, and you get the movies like that, which are. It's interesting how the politics flows because the 70s was a very cynical decade. If you watch any kind of 70s movie, you can kind of tell. One of my favorite 70s movies, 3 Days of the Condor. It's like the government is not to be trusted.
Yes. Yeah.
Don't trust the government. Don't trust anybody. It's like don't trust All the President's Men. A great example too. It's like this is based on what really happened. It's like the 70s were very cynical.
Yes.
And so Spielberg and Lucas were kind of responding to that and making more uplifting stories.
Yeah.
And sci-fi has been great for that. Like you said, it's like you can tell a story about real world things, but in sort of a fantasy context, and people can still get the message. I mean, again, Star Trek was great for that too.
Sure.
I mean, you had lots of episodes about race relations and episodes. I mean, you had Uhura and Kirk, and it's like the whole thing. There's a black person on the bridge of the Enterprise. What?
Right. It's like that's
In the
crazy.
60s?
Yeah.
That never fucking happened. And there's like a green alien with pointed ears. Looks like Satan. It's like that never happens.
Yes. Yep.
Have you ever read that book? I know I've talked about it before, but there's a book about the original making of the Star Trek show. It's like the book of how to write for TV, or
Yeah,
something
it's like the
that.
making of Star Trek.
Making of the original Star Trek. They show all the notes from the
Yeah.
studio stuff. Does he have to look like such a devil? Can he
Right.
bob the ears more? It's like shit like that. Do you have to have a black person? Literally, basically that.
Right.
Does he have to be? And then they had a Russian coming on the show, which is unheard of. And of course, the Klingons are supposed to be the Russians, right? But
Right. But yeah, especially in the 60s and 70s and the Cold War, it's like, A Russian's a good
Yeah.
guy? Are you kidding me? What the hell?
Well, because it's a future where we all get along,
Right.
even the Russians.
Right.
We all become pals, and we put aside childish things and petty. What is Picard's line? He's like, the pursuit of material things is not something we work to better
Yeah,
ourselves. He's trying to
exactly.
lecture in what is that? Is that in First Contact? It might be. I
I
can't
think
remember.
that's
But
actually in the pilot for Next Generation because
is it?
yeah.
I thought he was explaining that to what's her name's character in First Contact.
Maybe
But
he
anyway, it doesn't matter.
re-explains it, but I remember something like that in the
Yeah.
pilot for Next Generation. It's like, oh, we put material needs behind
Yeah.
us and things like that. So
Well, whatever. It's Patrick Stewart. Whatever he says is automatically elevated
yeah,
anyway.
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
that guy's a fucking genius, man. I'm so looking forward to season 2 of Picard. I'm so glad it's coming back.
Me too. I just rewatched the first season with my oldest son because he was like, "Can I watch that Star Trek Picard?" And we're like, "Yeah, absolutely." So we rewatched it with him.
Fuck
I
yeah.
was like,
And honestly,
watching it
yeah,
in one go was like, "Wow, that's even better," because it's really a serialized story. And
yeah, it is.
this is probably like the third or fourth time I've rewatched it, and it's just like, man, it's just really good.
Yeah, I don't even care what it's about necessarily. I just like Patrick Stewart.
Yeah,
I think that he
yeah,
he and like some of the cast, like Data and Worf and Riker, they just sit around a table and like play poker for an entire episode. I would totally watch that. Just get everybody out,
yeah,
just get everybody to hang out. I
exactly.
would totally watch that. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I was very excited to see Riker and Troy again. I was very, it's like, oh man, because, and I'll be the first person to admit when I heard about the Next Generation, I was like, what the, you can't have another Star Trek show. What the fuck are you talking about?
Right, exactly. Like,
But I was,
no, no.
and as I know we've discussed, the first season was sort of rough a little
Yeah,
bit.
of course.
They were trying to find in their space legs or whatever you want to call it, but. There can't be a kid on the bridge. I was like, Picard, you can't have a child on the bridge of the Enterprise. What the hell? sorry, Will Wheaton. But yeah, it totally grew on me. It's a great show. And there's people like my wife who never saw the original show, but their entry to Star Trek was Next Generation because her dad was a big Star Trek fan or is a big Star Trek fan. So that's her Star Trek. It's like, what Bond movie did you learn to, like I love Sean Connery. So Sean Connery is my first favorite Bond, you know. So it's like, when did you come into the franchise? I was OG Star Trek, but she's Next Generation, which is
Right.
funny. There's probably people who are like, I love Enterprise. That's my favorite Star Trek show. I'm
Sure.
like, really? All right, whatever, man. It's good for you.
So their first encounter with it. I mean, that's why I'm glad they're
No gatekeeping here.
right. That's why I'm glad they're kind of doing the animated Star Trek series right now because, again, like Clone Wars and some of the other animated fare from Star Wars. Here's something that I'm sure Lower Decks or the upcoming Prodigy or even maybe the original Star Trek animated series is something that there's always someone that is going to be experiencing that for the first time, and that's their gateway. They're into the franchise, and if it resonates for them and they think it's the best thing ever, that's awesome. And if it gets them to go, well, I want to see more of this, well, hey, you're in luck. There are 700 episodes of various shows that are out there that take place in the same universe, and
Go nuts.
right, and all of it. Discovery probably isn't going to be targeted for the same audience that really loves, Star Trek Prodigy or Star Trek Lower Decks, and that's fine. If they're like, this is my Star Trek, this is the best ever, I'm all for that. Same thing with like Doctor Who. I mean,
Right.
everyone's like, well, who's your favorite Doctor? And to me, my favorite is the character, the Doctor. But I understand that there are fans today that don't know anything about the classic series. They only found it the first time either watching an episode with Christopher Eccleston or David Tennant because they were
Yeah.
David Tennant fan, but they're now a Doctor Who fan, and that's great. That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I like Eccleston. I'm glad he's coming back, or he has already come back.
He
I'm not
has, yeah.
It's like Doctor Who is one of those things where I've never gotten into it, and
Right.
so
That's fine.
and
Yeah.
again, that's nothing. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with Doctor Who. You enjoy it.
Yeah.
People enjoy it. And I have one of my best friends is a rampant Doctor Who fan, but he would say his favorite Doctor Who is Tim Baker.
Tom Baker. Yeah. But
Tom Baker. Sorry, not Tim Baker. Tom Baker. Yeah. So I knew it was Baker. Sorry, but he came back too, didn't he?
he has.
Oh, no,
He
he's
did.
dead.
He's doing audios now too, and so is Christopher
Yeah.
Eccleston, and they're fantastic. So
Yeah, I like Eccleston a lot. He's one of those guys where he has sort of a reputation of being particular, not difficult, but like a perfectionist. Like at Norton, he's like very, this is my method and this is what I'm doing, which is probably why he hasn't blown up as much as he could have because he's an excellent actor. He's an amazing
he's
actor,
really
actually.
good.
But he's
Yes.
just, But then he also did Thor: Dark World, so
Right. Right.
Eccleston got to eat. So
Well, he did the G.I. Joe sequel too, or was it the first one? I forget. But he did one of the G.I. Joe movies too.
I like the second. The only reason I like the second one was Sienna Miller. I thought she was amazing,
Yeah.
but that's
Yeah.
another story. She's amazing
So
in most things. So
to answer your
anyway,
question,
back to sci-fi movies for a minute. Go
I
ahead.
would say. So here's a interesting stance. I don't have a singular favorite sci-fi or any movie. I have a lot of movies that I greatly enjoy, and I will always rewatch. And many of them I own, and I will watch multiple times. I think
Sure.
my favorite would depend on, like, I don't know, it would change within any given week. It would be because as soon as I would say, sure, Empire Strikes Back is my favorite sci-fi movie, I'm like, well, but wait a second, what about The Black Hole? That one was really great.
Oh
Or
no,
what
no,
about,
that's it. The Empire Strikes Back is the greatest sci-fi movie of all time. There you go.
that's not opinion, that's fact.
That's fact. Fact, baby. It's a perfect movie.
It is
Name one
pretty
flaw
perfect.
with Empire Strikes Back.
No.
Name one flaw. Can you? You can't. I challenge you to name one flaw with Empire Strikes Back.
No, there is
It
not.
is it is a classic. It's got action. It's got drama. It's got comedy. It's got romance. It's got everything and a tight story, and shit just works. And there's a huge fucking payoff at the end. No, I am your father. For fuck's sake, it's amazing.
But-
it's iconic. Nothing will ever be that good.
There's no
again. I'm
end to
sorry.
the movie. It continues to the next movie. There's no end.
There's an ending. Everything's wrapped up.
No, because
You could have ended you could have ended the movie. You could have ended the movie right there.
You would have been,
or the franchise.
You'd have been satisfied if the franchise just stopped there if there were no more.
Yeah, Han is forever imprisoned in Carbonite or whatever, and Luke and Leia go off and whatever, and Luke becomes a Jedi, goes to Dagobah, or goes back to Yoda. I mean, who knows? It doesn't matter. That was before franchises, right?
Yes.
There wasn't like a huge. I mean, maybe the Planet of the Apes movies, but those were kind of like a different case. But it's like when you're watching Empire Strikes Back in a vacuum after just watching Star Wars 2 years earlier, or almost 3 years earlier. Shit, it was 1980, so yeah, it was like 3 years later. You're not thinking, will there be a third one? I mean, maybe you already know, because
Yeah.
I was an avid reader of Starlog magazine, so I probably already knew things. Starlog, by the way, always an amazing magazine. You should definitely, if you've never looked at it, you should go back and look at
Such
it.
a
It's
great.
awesome.
Apparently, that was like my
it was
Bible.
it was
time.
the shit,
Yeah.
man. It was freaking awesome. That in Cinefex or Cinefantastique, that was another good one. But Starlog, yeah, Starlog was the best. But
Yes.
apparently, the people that own Fangoria are trying to bring back Starlog too. So I'm
I
excited
think
about
it's
that.
back
But
as a website. I think they do.
it is, yeah. It's not.
But it's
they're
not the
they're gonna
same. I
print.
just loved having the magazine and I would just
I
obsess
still have
over
all
it.
my Starlogs.
Man, I don't. I wish I did, but that's another story.
Yeah, someday they're going to be worth something. Probably not, but anyway.
They are worth
I don't know why
something to you. That's what matters.
They are. I don't know why I saved them all. I've gotten rid of so many other things that I probably should have kept, but I kept all my Starlogs, so go figure. Anyway, Empire Strikes Back, in my opinion, of course, if it's not a perfect movie, nothing's perfect, but it's pretty close. And to follow up something like Star Wars, a phenomenon. Yeah, I was going to say phenomenal, but not phenomenal. A good movie. Let's be honest. It's not a great movie. It's pretty good. But Empire Strikes Back is the shit. And also, Return of the Jedi was a disappointment to me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I was kind of aging out of the Star Wars thing at that point, but it's great. And then if I had to pick another one, I would also say that if we're turning back to Star Trek, my favorite Star Trek movie, and probably maybe yours too, is Wrath of Khan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I just rewatched that recently, and I'm like, wow, that's.
I would submit that is the best Star Trek movie of all of the Star Trek movies.
That that's another movie I would say I would put up against Empire and say find a flaw in the Wrath of Khan. Tell me something in Wrath of Khan where it just goes awry and doesn't work, and I don't think you can.
No, it works. It absolutely works. I think that everyone is great, and all the actors are doing a much superb job. Over if you just watched Star Trek: The Motion Picture, you're like, huh, that was interesting. There was a lot of shots of the Enterprise. Robert Wise must really love the Enterprise. Yeah. Scotty loves the Enterprise. He's like trying to.
Well, they reuse some of that in Wrath of Khan, but
like he's flying around the Enterprise. He's like jerking off when he's doing that, right? So
he just spends days doing that. Hours.
He's like, I'm just gonna. Oh, I love her. She's my favorite lady. Anyway, Scotty had issues, but we love him.
But it's a great movie. You know what?
It's a
Here's another thing too.
Wrath of Khan is a great movie. There's no
I
denying it. It's a great movie.
rewatched. I decided to rewatch the trilogy of Star Trek Two, Star Trek Three, and Star Trek Four, and Star Trek Three is a really really good movie. I don't think it gets enough attention. I think it's kind of dismissed. It's just the one that Spock came back, and admittedly the effects in it, especially on the Genesis planet, are not the best. But it's a really good movie. I mean, it gets some great performances. The thing I don't like about it is, and the thing that I did like about Wrath of Khan is, even though, I mean, we have the death of Spock, which is like unheard of, in the biggest event maybe in Star Trek at that time. It's still, the Wrath of Khan still ends on an optimistic note. It was amazing to me that Nicholas Meyer was able to do that. It's like, here,
Yeah, it was only his second movie he ever made in his life.
here's something really devastating, but yet you come out of the movie feeling positive,
Hopeful. Right.
and I kind of feel like Star Trek 3 kind of does the reverse, because it starts out with kind of the hopeful thing that, hey, Spock is probably still alive and there's a way we can bring him back, and then they give up everything, including their ship, to get him back. Kirk's son gets killed in it and stuff like that, which has maybe that the aftermath of that is probably Shatner's finest performance as Kirk. It's just a brilliant moment. The way, I don't know if it was him or Nimoy that decided to have him play it that way, but it's just pretty beautiful, especially for the character of Kirk. Anyway, and it's
Yeah, I always felt like, I mean, he was good, but I always felt like Shatner's always been one of those people where I can see the wheels turning, kind of. He's doing. I can see the technique, I guess is what I'm saying. He's not seamless. He was better later, like when he played Denny Crane in that show that I can't remember with James Spader, Boston Legal.
Yeah.
He was better in that, I think, because he wasn't carrying the weight of Kirk.
Yes. Well,
he was just playing another character. He was good and more relaxed. This is him, carrying a franchise on his shoulders in a way.
Sure.
And I don't think he was, he's an actor of somewhat limited range, in my opinion. And so that's why if I'm ever going to compare it, it's like I think my favorite Star Trek movie besides Wrath of Khan would be like First Contact, because it's like you have Picard and like Patrick Stewart blows him away. Let's be honest.
Sure.
So,
well, the moment I'm talking about is like right after David gets killed and Kirk,
you Klingon bastard,
the Klingon
you killed
bastard
my son.
falls down, and that to me is the only time, maybe not the only, that's like the first time we've ever seen Kirk broken and Kirk's bravado gone, because every other time he's like blustered his way through. I mean,
I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
Yeah, even with Spock dying, he was still stoic in that moment, and here he's just like completely gone, and just everything is taken out of him. And it was even just brilliant, the reactions to the cast around him, because they realize that too. They're like, holy shit, this is Kirk finally broken. And it was just the way it was played, quiet. There's no like music behind it or anything, and it was just I don't know, it was just well done. I like moments in movies, character moments especially, and that was just like, wow, this is a Kirk. It gave me chills watching it, because I'm like, wow, we've never seen. It's kind of like the moment where you realize that your dad is mortal and not the superhero that everybody envisions their dad being for the most part.
Right.
And it was just like, whoa. And at that point, you're like, are we done? Is this it? And then, of course, he pulls it out, but it was just like, whoa.
Well, he pulls it out by destroying the Enterprise. So it's kind of fucked up. He loses his best friend in the movie before that. Then he loses his son, and then he blows up his own ship.
Right.
So
and
he's lost all the things in the world that he cared about. I mean, he didn't get a chance, I don't think, to know David as well as he knows Spock. Obviously, he loves Spock. Spock is his brother, and basically in every way except the real way. But it's like, the death of Spock was, I think, very devastating, but he goes on because he feels optimistic about the future, because he feels young.
Right.
He gets to explore space, to go that away or whatever. But then then David dies, and then he's like, "We gotta blow up the ship." God,
It's like, I'm
God,
just
what
going
have
to
I
get rid of
done?
everything now. And it was just like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I think that's interesting that you say that because it's like you're deconstructing Kirk at that point.
Right.
Everything that he's ever cared about is gone, has been stripped away, right?
Right.
And so all he has is what's inside of him because he's probably gotten away with a lot of shit because he's a cocky guy and he just does what he wants and he doesn't believe in the no-win scenario and
Right.
he doesn't believe in I always cheated death, but now he's facing death for the first time with Spock's death, with his son's death, and now the death of the other thing in the world or the universe that he cares about, which is the Enterprise. So he's getting, like you said, he's getting knocked to his lowest level, and that makes good character development. I agree with you. His arc, he was like at his lowest point at this point, right?
That was the
So
moment that for the first time ever Kirk lost, just flat out lost.
he did. Well, he had to face death finally, right?
I mean, he did pull it out,
Even
but
even
he
at the end,
lost.
even at the end of the last movie, he's like, Spock, maybe he'll come back.
Yeah.
It is life from lifelessness or whatever
Right.
she says.
Right.
And they find that the monolith at the end. So
Exactly. And
might as well have
monkeys
cue 2001
flinging
music.
poo. No.
Mikey's flinging poo into the air, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and that's why I don't discount Star Trek 3. I think it's still a strong entry into
Really
in
good
the
movie.
sort of
Rewatch it. You
13 movies of Star Trek. Yeah, it's good, and it is really good for the character beats. I mean, it's hard to follow Wrath of Khan though. Let's be honest.
that's
it's
true.
hard to be the third movie in the. I mean, Wrath of Khan also benefited from following, Star Trek the movie, but but it was so good. It's so good. Fucking Ricardo Montalban, fucking quoting Shakespeare. It's, I spit at thee. It's like, come on, dude. This guy's awesome. He's one of the greatest villains of all time. Khan.
Other than glaring at each other through a video screen, they never share the screen together, and it's just brilliant.
They don't.
It's brilliant the way
They don't. It's like it's
know.
one of my favorite kind of things. It's basically a submarine movie,
Yeah.
which I love.
Yeah.
So it's like Enemy Below. Everything goes back to Enemy Below, right?
Yeah, Nicholas Meyer just did an amazing job, and
Yeah.
he still was involved in the franchise going forward, and to lesser degrees. Although I guess he did write and direct Star Trek 6, which is a pretty decent movie too. But yeah, I think maybe for good or for ill, the Wrath of Khan set the bar for Star Trek movies, and I don't think
it set it pretty high.
and I don't think any Star Trek movie after that hit that bar. There's some really good ones. Next Generation ones are pretty good, and I love.
Well, I
love
was gonna say First Contact. First Contact is one of the best.
Yeah.
Because you get you're in full Picard, full Riker, full everybody mode, and they get to fight the Borg, and Picard gets to have his flashbacks to when he was assimilated, and you get the Borg Queen, which although is interesting because they're supposed to be a collective, so why is there a queen, right? But she manages to be hot but also terrifying. And you get Data to try to sacrifice himself, and Picard has a lot of really good moments, and Picard has a lot of like come to Jesus moments. I guess I'm going to use that phrase because he's like blasting those Borg with the machine gun on the holodeck. He's like, oh, she tells him later, you kind of enjoyed it. He's like, how dare you say that? We don't enjoy killing. That's ridiculous.
Right.
And then, poor Ensign Lynch, right? He got blown away. But
I know.
it's just, how do I remember that shit? I don't know. It's funny. I don't remember what happened yesterday, but I can tell you that Ensign Lynch is the one who got killed, and it was a Borg assimilated that Picard blown away or blew away in the holodeck. But anyway, so that's when she has the conflict with Picard, and he talks about how they work to better themselves. We don't believe in revenge. We don't believe in that kind of shit. And and then she talks about Ahab and all that. So it's so literary too.
You broke your little ships, which is
you broke your little ships. Yeah. Alfre Woodard, man, she's great in that movie.
Amazing.
But yeah, that's a really good. I think that's probably the strongest Next Generation movie. I would say so.
Yeah.
But I don't want this to be all about Star Trek. Although Star Trek has been a huge part of our lives because there's been 15 movies now, or something like that. So it's been around. And I'm not saying that it's more important than Star Wars. And I'm not going to get into the Star Wars versus Star Trek debate. But I will tell you again that my first real love of Star Trek, or I'm sorry, of sci-fi,
Star Trek
was Star Trek first. Yeah. It was. But then Star Wars was amazing, and then Empire Strikes Back, and then Blade Runner and Aliens, and a bunch of other amazing films that I think that are some of my favorites. E.T. I think is a great movie.
I think Close Encounters is too. Although in later years I'm like, that guy's a horrible dad. What the hell?
in Close Encounters, is he a horrible dad, or is he's got that like, the thing that Spielberg loves to do is like the whole childlike innocence. Like if you watch Jurassic Park again, which I did recently, all like the characters, Dr. Grant and Dr. Sadler's like, oh my God, you have a T-Rex. They're like kids, right? They're like kids in a candy store. They lose their whatever, and then of course Malcolm the cynic is like, oh, you didn't think about whether you should, and talking about chaos theory and everything. But the kids, the childlike love of things. That's why E.T. is such a great movie. It's from the kids' perspective.
Well, except
and so Roy Scheider is basically a kid too. And then
Neary is Roy Neary. That was Neary. Him, right? That was the character in Close Encounters. I mean, he's the example of, the father who's like, you know what? I'm going to quit my job and go do my passion project, and I don't care if it destroys my family. I mean, that's basically what that was. He's just like, I am not even resonating with the fact that what I'm doing is alienating me from my kids and my wife, and screw my life. And I'm like, as a kid, I didn't really get any of that because I was just like, oh, this is a really fun movie. But then as an adult, and maybe after becoming a father, I was just like, what the fuck? I'm like, dude, what are you doing?
Well, he scares the kids and the neighbors, and his wife is freaked out because Terry Garr, by the way, great in that movie. She's like sort of underappreciated. I think
he runs off with another woman to go to a foreign land, basically.
I mean, kind of. But my question about that though was he really in control at that point? I mean, it was like a compulsion, right? Because the aliens implanted this thing in his mind that he had to go. So I think that's the reason, the way you're supposed to excuse him and excuse his behavior, because he's totally irresponsible.
Yeah.
But he's obsessed. Yeah. And that's the nature of his obsession. And Dreyfuss does a great job in the movie.
Oh, sure.
Even though he's drinking like a quart of vodka every day, probably. But
yes. But
it's just like, I mean, which is detailed in several books. He talks about it. And how much of a problem it was. But he's just obsessed, and he has to go. He has no other choice. Like when they're in the helicopter, well, if they don't want us here, maybe we shouldn't be here. It's like he takes off the mask. He doesn't trust anybody. Right. It's like, I'm going to go. It's like, don't trust the government. They're lying to you. Fake news. There's no.
If he was that much of a paranoid schizophrenic, maybe it's good that his family doesn't have him anymore. But it's like,
well, that's right.
They just like go away, and then it's just like, oh, all right, no big deal.
Well,
he got what he wanted, so that's what's important.
Well, that's the nature of obsession. I mean, I feel like Spielberg identifies with his character a little bit. It's like, this is what I'm going to do to the detriment of everything else in my life, all my other personal relationships. But the question I had for Roy Neary in the first place, though, was he was pretty dissatisfied with his job in the first place. He wasn't getting promoted. He wasn't moving. I feel like his wife was kind of, nothing against Terry Garr, but I feel like the magic in his life was gone. Like she even calls him Jiminy Cricket at one point, right? In the movie. It's like the magic in his life is gone, and he was able to recapture that.
So he should have got a better job. I'm just saying.
I agree. It's the 70s, dude. What do you want from me?
Yeah.
It's cynic. They're all cynics. This came out in the same year as Star Wars, by the way,
did.
Which is kind of funny. Yeah. So it's definitely a different vision of sort of extraterrestrials in space and whatever. Because like in Star Wars, space is dirty. Shit is like old, and it's the Empire. It's the tail end of the Empire, right? But in E.T., the ships are beautiful and colorful, and it's a sea of lights, and it's magical for kids. Yeah. It's like ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Ice cream.
Exactly. And so it's a fantasy. It's like this guy. There's absolutely nothing from the moment you meet him in the movie. There's nothing that will stop him from getting on that ship at the end.
Right.
It's that's what's going to happen. It's just going to happen. Whatever things are going to happen, whatever things are going to conspire to get him there, that's where he's going to end up. Right. But then they return the mom's kid, right?
Yes.
Barry comes back. Yeah. So she goes because of that. She actually has a reason. She's trying to find out where her son went.
Right, exactly.
So her motivation actually makes sense.
Yes.
So I guess the question is it her story or is it Richard Dreyfuss's story?
Well, it's a better movie to me if it's her story. If it's his, it's just like, wow, what a selfish prick. But
well, he kind of is a little bit because we do spend a lot of screen time with her, right?
That's true.
I mean,
That's true.
We do get Roy Neary, and we do get a lot with him. But we also get a lot with her, and
I think it's just secretly the whole story is about Francois Truffaut's character, but that's just me.
Monsieur Lecomte.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you meet him first, right?
Right.
By the way, what a fucking amazing way to start a movie.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
finding these airplanes in the desert. It's like, it's Flight 19. It's like, what? Of course they have to have the noob so you can explain
Well,
what
yeah.
Flight 19
What's
is.
that? Well, here.
What's
Let me
that? What's
explain
that
to
button there? Let me explain to you why we're here,
Yeah.
new guy.
Yeah.
New
Convenient new guy.
who also can speak French and Spanish or whatever, but also knows how to make maps. Isn't that convenient? So later, when we need to know what these coordinates are, because we're a group of scientists who don't know what longitude and latitude means, luckily you're here to help us, map guy.
It's also like back in the day where scientist meant you knew like everything about science, right? There were no, I mean,
Right.
there's no such thing as a scientist who knows all of it. There's, you have specialties and stuff like that. But back in the 70s in movies, well, actually probably even now in movies, scientists know things about computers and physics and astronomy.
Maybe, but I kind of felt like those guys each had their specialties in a way.
Maybe so.
Because there's like the guys doing the doctors, there's the guys doing the astronomy, there's the guy playing the organ or whatever. So you got the soldiers, you got the guys doing the camera shit.
Except for the new guy who knew everything, but that's okay.
My favorite guy, though, was they had this entire bank of cameras. He pops up with his little Instamatic and takes a picture. I still remember that.
That was pretty great.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm keeping this shit for myself.
This is
I don't
for
care
my
what
personal
happens.
collection. Thank you.
This is for the gram. I'm for the clout when I was here.
Exactly.
So he's like taking a selfie. Hey, look, aliens, woo!
Yeah.
Which is what happened. What would happen now?
Oh, they would be like they'd all have their backs to it with their phones taking selfies of, look, I'm with aliens.
Exactly.
LOL.
Exactly. Hanging with the aliens, lol. Yeah. So, but maybe it is her story. Maybe it's her because she has a complete arc, right? I mean, when Roy gets on the ship, his story's not finished.
Right.
If you think about it, it's like, because what happens on the ship? What happens later? But hers is like, I got my kid back, and that was the most important thing. So I feel like, in a lot of ways, after watching that movie, 1,000 times now, that it's more of her story than his. Because she has a complete arc, and he doesn't.
Yeah, I still like to think that, they fed him something that gave him some horrible disease and killed him because he's an asshole. But I did, as a kid, I remember watching it going, wait, you're stopping now? I want to see, what the hell? I want to...
And then they have this special edition where there's like 2 more minutes inside the ship where it's just like lights and shit.
Yeah, and even then I was like, no,
is,
I want to know what was this all for? I mean...
Well, that's another interesting thing, because what was it all for?
Right.
What was the reason that all these people were compelled to come here?
Right, and why was he selected to be on the ship, and what purpose? That, to me, I thought it ended at the wrong place, and maybe... I mean, that wasn't the story they were trying to tell, I guess, but I'm just like, well, wait a second. Why did he give up his entire life and shun his family and become obsessed and be led here possibly just to get on the ship? I'm like, no, come on. What was the reason for this? That's not the end. So.
Right, but then the other thing too is that they have this whole team of astronauts or whatever standing by. They weren't summoned.
Right.
These are just people that the government picked to go on the ship, and then the aliens were like, okay, come on, everybody. Oh, and we'll take you too. So is he the only one who got the psychic connection or whatever?
Right. Other than that, I like thinking that the government just has a group of people that they keep trained that, hey, if aliens show up and we need people to go on the ship, you guys are it. And so
we're going to make sure y'all have matching sunglasses and jumpsuits too. Look like, that's important.
You're going to look like the aliens from V, but.
And you need those those folders which have nothing in them, of course. Why do you guys have folders for? It's like, you know who you are.
They're going to take notes.
Anyway, whatever.
That's what it is. Yeah.
No, but they give up the folders.
Well, that's true.
To the bus guy.
Oh, that's right.
I mean, the guy on the bus chewing the gum was also a great like quick pop of like this close ups. Like, what the fuck is this? And that's like a charter bus. No shit, it's a charter bus. It's just those little details. Yeah. I just love. This is Spielberg at his most sort of freewheeling in a way, if you think about it. I mean, it was the 70s and there was a lot of drugs around and whatever. And so I kind of feel like 70s Spielberg is my favorite Spielberg in a way. He's not quite so technical and everything's not quite so clean and perfect. Like, there's so many great little throwaway things in this movie that are just
same
sort
thing
of
in
there.
Jaws too. He did kind of the same thing there.
And the cinematography is, I mean, the photography is beautiful.
Cinematography and the music are amazing. The sound is awesome.
If you want to know anything about lighting or composition, I mean, Close Encounters is a great movie to watch for that.
Yes,
you can learn a lot from it. But like one of my favorite shots of all time, it's an iconic shot. They pull up in the station wagon, they start running, and the camera, it's craning up, and as they go up the hill, right, you see Devil's Tower rising in the background. It's like, that's fucking amazing shit. brilliant
Well,
filmmaking,
so
I think.
here's a movie that had impact. I mean, I saw that when it came out, and I've seen it multiple times over the years, right? And then several years ago, driving across country from North Carolina to Oregon, I made a point of taking the route that took me by Devil's Tower, so I could go actually see it in person.
Nice.
And I'll tell you this. I mean, it is just the mountain sitting out there. There's nothing around it. But I will not. I will say, actually standing there, I didn't go up on it or anything like that. But just standing there at the bottom, I got a little emotional because it resonated with me, and it's been something that has been a part of my entertainment life for all my life. And actually seeing it in person was a pretty amazing moment. So, yeah. So there you go. See?
Yeah, no, I would love to see that. I've never gone through that part of Wyoming. I'm going on a trip in the future, near future, through Colorado and stuff and other places. But I was thinking I should go to the Overlook Hotel when I'm up
Oh,
there.
there you
But,
go. Well, so here that was the other thing. I got to visit the outside of the Overlook Hotel because it's the lodge on Mount Hood here in outside of Portland. So I actually got to see the outside of that. So that was another kind of like, ooh, interesting moment to me.
I thought it was in Colorado. I thought it was in Colorado.
That's where it was set, but the outside of the hotel, the outside shots.
Oh, I always thought
Nope.
I always thought the hotel was the outside of it was in Colorado.
Nope.
Oh, well then I don't know what I'm talking
Portland.
about. Well, never mind then.
Mount Hood, the
Then I won't go
Timberline
see it.
Lodge.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think they did do
Well,
some shots at a hotel in Colorado because like there's no
silly
there's no
me.
hedge maze and stuff like that at Timberline Lodge. But
Well, shoot. So yeah, I was looking it up and I saw it. I'm like, that looks
then
familiar.
you need to come out
The
here
sort
to
of
Portland and we'll go see it.
I guess so. That's pretty far away though. I'll try. But that's not a science fiction movie, so it doesn't matter.
That's a
We're
horror movie.
talking about sci-fi right now. So speaking of the other thing is, it's interesting to me how many Spielberg movies sort of appear on my list because E.T.'s on my list and also Jurassic Park too, which is a great. If you're talking about hard sci-fi movies and sort of adventure films, it's very and also very innovative too, right?
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely.
I think it's the first Jurassic Park really holds up for me, and the effects still hold up, and the sort of suspense and the vehicles don't hold up because no one drives a Ford Explorer anymore. But it's just it's one of those good movies that still has impact. It's still, even though I know exactly what's going to happen, it's still tense.
Well, I
Right.
have one problem with that movie though. I have a huge problem with that movie that I only discovered in, well, I want to say recent years, but I have a problem with the physics of that movie. Not physics,
The physics.
geography of that movie. So the paddock where they feed the Tyrannosaurus Rex, right?
The
Is
Tyrannosaurus paddock.
they have the goat out there. It's this flat area. He comes over, he eats the goat, and then he breaks out of there, and suddenly that area is like this 100-foot drop off. I'm like, where did that come from? That part never made
The
any
rain.
sense to me.
It was the rain, man.
It washed it out.
It washed
At
it
that
out. Yeah,
part,
yeah.
I was
thought
like, what? Wait a second. That was not a drop off. That fence was between them and a flat area. Now it's suddenly this right at the fence. That didn't make any sense to
Well,
me.
that's not as cinematic. See.
Right. So that part, I was like, whoa, wait a second.
Well, yeah, that is interesting. I sort of wonder that myself. But when you're watching the movie for the first time or whatever, you don't really make that connection. But
Yes.
on subsequent viewings, I definitely wondered about the geography of that situation because it seems like the T-Rex is coming through the fence and sort of standing on flat ground, right?
Right.
But then not that far down is this giant cliff that drops off. That seems like a weird place to put a T-Rex paddock.
Right.
I'm just saying.
I'm like, if that cliff was there, then T-Rex wouldn't have come through the fence. But okay.
Well, no, exactly. Why? Yeah. Why would they build it right next to that?
Right.
Well, because I can tell you why. Because that sequence was added later.
Right. Of course. Absolutely. But it's like
That was filmed at Universal Backlot, not in Hawaii, and that was it's like we need more tension, we need more suspense, we need more. I think it was because people didn't realize that Alan was going to save the kids, that he cared about the
Right.
kids, so he climbs up there to get the kid out, right? So it's like he has to. Because I don't remember. I don't think that's in the book either. But I haven't read the book in a while. So,
But you,
You have to be sure that Alan Grant will care about the kids and not
yes,
just leave them behind.
yeah,
And
yes.
so he has to save the boy, right? So,
But I mean, that's well, I guess that's a minor quibble. It's still a pretty great movie, and
well, it is. It's a great movie in the sense that if you're talking about sci-fi, I mean, I like Crichton books in general, Michael Crichton,
he
but
writes some good
I mean,
books.
he
Or
did. Andromeda Strain's one of my favorite movies, even though it's boring, which also directed by Robert Wise, strangely enough.
no, Andromeda Strain. That is one that is on my list of favorites. And what I like about it is the only sci-fi element of that is this apparent alien disease. I like the sci-fi movies that are kind of, I call them covert sci-fi movies, where the only element that is science fiction is kind of like talked about and not really shown. Um, Maybe I'm not describing that correctly, but
No,
Andromeda
I know what you
Strain is
mean. It's
kind of
like
like that. I mean,
yeah, it's an alien bacteria,
yeah,
right?
it's an alien invasion movie, but we don't ever see the aliens, and it's a bacteria, and it's not like big
Well, you
explosions
do,
and
but
stuff like.
they're
Well,
microscopic. You
yeah,
see them
yeah, yeah.
in an atomic microscope or
Well,
whatever.
yes, okay, but I mean, it's not
But
like
yeah, I no, I agree with you. It's sci-fi also in the sense that it's sort of speculative
yeah,
about the science that's available. Because I doubt that we have quite as much science stuff. At least then, when the movie came out, we weren't quite as advanced. So it's Crichton takes stuff like he wrote a book about nanotechnology where it's what exists now, but 10 years from now, or Jurassic Park even,
right,
it's
right,
a prime example. We have some bit of cloning and whatever, but what if
right.
we could find the amber of the dinosaur DNA, dino DNA, and just turn it into
Dinosaur.
turn it into
Yeah.
dinosaur. Thank you, Mr. DNA.
Yes.
So you just turn it into you can regrow dinosaurs. And everyone, I mean, in the book, it's kind of funny. They talk about how everyone can have their own little pet dinosaur, like pocket dinosaurs and stuff.
Pokemon. Yes.
Pokemon, yeah, and it's funny because that is absolutely a conversation that people would have. I can totally
Oh, that
picture
would be
it.
the way it would go.
The the
Totally.
book is much more cynical than
Yeah.
the movie, as it turns out. But I don't think Crichton really cared too much about the about capitalism as much as he does about other things. But I mean, and Hammond doesn't come off very good in the book either. He
Yes.
does. He's much more sympathetic in the movie. I mean, Richard Attenborough is awesome, but we spared no expense. And so Samuel Jackson
Hold on to your
and
butts. Yeah.
Newman from Seinfeld,
Yes.
who's apparently the only one that can debug code and whatever.
I
It's
think
so funny.
I think what I like about Crichton is he takes these pretty fantastical ideas and completely grounds them. So the way he tells his
Yeah.
story, I mean, even Timescape, is it Timescape, the one with time travel? It's still grounded. It's not like they don't time travel to the future or anything like that. But or maybe they do at one point.
We
But
can't go to the future; it doesn't
that's
exist,
right.
right?
But I like I mean, even Jurassic Park, it's like, well, let's ground this. What if they actually did this? What would it be like? And it's not like dinosaurs that are flying T-Rexes or hybrids. It's like, well, no, what if they actually brought these back? Let's do that.
Right, and that's my problem with these subsequent movies too. Is they have to up the stakes too
right.
much.
Yes.
I mean, this movie worked because it was just far enough, quote unquote, in the future to be not exactly plausible, but easily understood. Like that could happen,
Right.
and that's what he's talking about. It's like this is a cautionary tale. It's like don't do this, dummies.
Right.
Cloning is bad. Genetic manipulation is bad. You don't know what the consequences are going to be. I mean, and Malcolm, Jeff Goldblum, awesome in the movie, is just his iconic line. They didn't think about whether they should. Right? It's like
Right.
you shouldn't do this just because you can.
Right.
You know.
Even
He's absolutely right.
the
So,
original Westworld. I mean, yeah, that's
yeah.
futuristic, but that's still grounded. It's like, I mean, we have animatronic characters in parks and stuff like that now. I mean, and that is going. Some of the things they're talking about doing in Disney will have actually interactive, animatronic characters. So it's like, what if that went awry? And so,
Right. We're just like 10 minutes away from sex with robots.
absolutely, exactly. We're gonna have hosts any day now.
Sex robots for everybody. Yeah.
So-
Hosts for
Yeah.
everybody.
So yeah, I mean, Crichton, I think, I don't know what he was like as a person. I've heard things about him, but I think he wrote some great books, and from those,
Well,
got
he
some pretty
had a
fantastic
grounding
movies.
in science. I mean, he was a doctor,
Yeah,
so
we got some great movies from it, and
yeah.
I think some of his books that haven't been made into movies are still going to be, but yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I always like Jurassic Park, and it's partially because of Spielberg. He's just at the top of his game, and the effects are amazing for the times. And even now, the CG still holds up, I think. And we were going to talk about that, the difference between visual effects and special effects. So this is a perfect movie to talk about that. So
Yes.
the visual effects or the computer generated effects are like the dinosaurs running around
Right.
and the
Right.
T-Rex and shit. But the special effects are maybe like when Grant is listening to the dinosaur breathe, because that's an animatronic dinosaur that Stan Winston's team built, and so
Yes.
it's an actual physical thing that he's leaning on, and also special effects could be explosions or spark hits, or I suppose you could make a case that the glass with the water shaking could have been a special effect
Yeah,
too.
that's a special effect.
Special
Because
effects.
I bet that
It
took
is.
them a long time just to get it exactly the way they wanted it.
It did, and you know how they did it, right? Have you
I
heard?
have not.
Oh, they put the table thing over like a guitar string, and they would pluck the guitar string, and that would
Nice.
vibrate the thing, which would vibrate the glass. That's how they figured it out. Yeah,
That's great.
I mean that's to me is a practical effect. People
Right.
are doing that; it's a special effect. But now they would just CG the water, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, computers are super helpful, and the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park to me look great. Sometimes they break down a little bit,
Yes. But for the
the
most
T
part,
Rex at night, scary as
yeah.
hell.
No, I mean, as we're discussing pre-show and our pre-show funk,
In the warm up.
in the warm-up, that obviously we wouldn't have had Endgame and Infinity War and probably most of the Marvel movies without really good computer effects, and you can do amazing things with CGI. I mean, it's hard to tell in, I would say, most of the Marvel movies things that are digital effects and created by computers. That's how.
Ironically, most of it is.
And most of it is, and it's most of it's done on green screen and stuff added later. But it's advanced enough at this point that it looks great. But for my money, nothing beats doing things practically or in camera, as they say. That's why I was really excited when J.J. Abrams, when they were talking about Episode 7. Force Awakens, that he was committed to doing as much of that with practical effects as possible, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of in the spirit with Star Wars and its beginnings. I mean, because the prequel trilogy was a lot of people standing around basically on green screen sets, and everything was added later. Looks beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's, I don't know, there's something about doing it practical effect. You get a better reaction, you get better acting, and a better scene in the end result, I think. So,
Well, it looks real because it's in the room,
Yeah,
right? It's really
absolutely.
there. So, but it's like anything. You can stand in a room that's real and a real set, and it's real. It's physical and it exists, but it's almost indistinguishable now from computer generated. The thing that computer generated, where it breaks down, is the longer you hold on it, right?
Right.
The longer you show it, people can start picking out the flaws. It's like, oh, that's not real. And people like us who've seen a lot of stuff and know what visual effects can do and can't do, it's like, oh, well, that's obviously fake.
But here's the thing, though. I would argue that
It's okay.
computer effects and computer technology in movies is in the same spirit and a direct result of the early days of figuring out how we're going to do this. If they had had computers then, it wouldn't have been a problem. And, as we discussed earlier, too, if you look at a lot of early sci-fi movies and stuff like that, you can tell that, oh, well, that's not real. Oh, that's where they used the model. And that monster is just a stop motion model and stuff like that. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think those movies are lovely. But I would say it was like, well, we have this computer technology. I mean, kind of Tron and Last Starfighter were the first ones to kind of use computer generated effects. And it's like, all right, so how do we create things that look realistic? And I don't think there's any less, in my opinion, there's no less artistry there than with Dykstra and Ben Burt and those guys that started out with Dark Star and Star Wars and stuff like that. So
Dark Star.
yeah, so I don't want it to come across as I'm like, oh, computers ruined everything, because I still think there's artistry there. I mean, watching some of the behind the scenes stuff and seeing what they do with computers and the team of people they have and how they draw things out on the tablet and render it. It's like,
No, it's definitely artist. It's definitely an
yeah,
artistic. There's artistry to it. That's what I'm trying to say.
yes,
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. There's those technological people, but you still have to have someone. There's still a vision behind it.
yes.
There's still whatever the tool is, whether it's a digital pen or a an airbrush or a matte painting that you paint on a piece of glass
Matte paintings, I love those.
whatever whatever that is. There's artistry to it. I mean, I think that it's amazing what we can do now, but I would prefer, at least for me, I like to see things in the frame.
Yes.
I like you said, in camera.
Yeah.
I think it looks more quote unquote real, which is sort of ironic to say in a movie, which of course is totally fake.
Well, it's being done
But-
real. It's being done there, and
Yeah, it's happening.
I think eyeline.
but you're right. Some of the model work is bad
Yeah.
in old movies and whatever. It's fine.
I think the eyeline
we were
and
kids.
the reactions from the actors and stuff like that are more genuine when it's a practical effect.
Well, the other thing that's interesting to me too is that the CG has become so good that it's almost weird now. It's startling in a way for me when I see bad CG in a big movie, like in Endgame, for example, or in not Endgame, but
Infinity War.
Infinity War. Jesus Christ, yes, Infinity War. Thank you. There's some pretty bad CG in that. Like most of the shots with Bruce Banner in the Hulk suit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, it looks bad.
Yeah.
It's like they show him, and I'm like, what? How did that get into a Marvel movie?
Right.
Did you guys just run out of money at some point? It looked terrible, right? It looked all weird. The proportions looked weird. Like there's this wide shot where it's like, you blah, 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 bastards, whatever. It's like, what?
Yes.
I mean, I'm not saying that it took me out of the movie because obviously it's a comic book movie, so
Right.
I'm not exactly invested necessarily. Although great movie, I enjoyed it. It's just that particular thing took me out of it. It was just I just said it took me out of it, but that's not what I mean. It's just it was weird. It was startling to see how bad it was.
Yes. Well, I would say one of the things as far as special effects and digital effects nowadays that has come a long way is when they have an actor playing a duplicate of themselves in the same scene.
Oh, sure.
That always bugged me for many, many years. And Star Trek always had that in other sci-fi shows and movies. But it was like, if you looked at the scene, their eyes never quite, they're like looking at each other and talking to each other, the eyes never quite matched up. Or, their eyes never, like if you're in a conversation with someone, you're not standing stock still and your eyes are going to kind of follow each other and all that. And they never quite were able to pull that off, and now I feel they're kind of at that point where it looks natural.
Sure.
I mean, they have the duplicate characters handing stuff to each other and things like that, and it doesn't look like an arm popping up out of the off camera to hand it and stuff like that, right? It's
with like a different hair on it or something.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, wow, that actually works.
It's funny you mentioned the sort of twin thing where it was solidified for me, and it's no surprise that it was perfected by someone who's a noted perfectionist. I think perfected in my mind, at least. David Fincher perfected it in Social Network.
Yeah.
Because you have Armie Hammer playing the Winklevoss twins, and I would have bet any amount of money that there were two Armie Hammers.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
That is, in my opinion, that is the most seamless twins I've ever seen in a movie.
That was done really well. Yep, you're right.
I mean, Fincher is a technician, of course, and a brilliant filmmaker, and it doesn't surprise me that his level of perfectionism is what made it work for me. But I didn't know who Armie Hammer was when I saw that movie necessarily. And so I was like, there's got to be two. I was shocked to find out there's not two of them.
Right.
It was that seamless. It was that well done. And I mean, they're sitting in the boat, doing the crew with the rowing, and they're doing. I mean, it's like the whole thing. It was super well done, and so
Yep.
I wasn't surprised that he's the one who figured it out. Although I'm sure other people have figured it out too. But it's just that was my first recollection of going, oh my God, that's
yeah.
amazing.
So for me,
really
that
well
is
done.
finally kind of more or less perfected is a huge thing, because that oddly enough would throw me out of a story or throw me out of a movie, because I'm like, why is he looking at the other person's his duplicate's forehead, or his duplicate is moving over to the side, and his eyes are still looking in the space where he was. And it's just like, it just irked me.
Well, I mean,
And I don't,
yeah, a lot of it also is they didn't have the time to
No,
perfect
I
that.
know
Whereas
that.
Fincher is like, take 406. Okay, go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we'll do this until we get it right. And
We'll do this
he had
until
the
I am
money and
satisfied.
luxury to do that. But
Right.
that just always bugged me. But
So, but that is not a sci-fi movie though, so it doesn't matter so much. But
or
what
is
any
it?
other? All right, if someone asks you point blank, what is your favorite sci-fi movie? What would you say? You don't know, right? Because you don't have you have a revolving
I
favorite.
don't. I'd have to give a list. I mean, I would have to say, well,
Yeah.
here's like top. Here's like
It's
five
like
or six.
picking your favorite child.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, and it also depends on mood. I mean, if it was like you have to pick one, and if you asked me today, I would say, you know what, Empire Strikes Back. But then if you came to me a couple days and said, what's your favorite sci-fi movie? I'm gonna say, 2001. You know, it would, or Blade Runner. You know, maybe Blade Runner is it. I don't know. But there's
or Alien or Aliens.
but there's like a list. I would say I could give you several that I will rewatch and love. And actually, you know what? Some of the ones that I really like, I haven't watched in a long time, and I don't think that's a criteria for having to be favorite. But yeah, I can't give you one because I would
there's
be
a lot
like
of-
Empire Strikes
yeah.
Back. Oh, wait a second, but no, it's so.
Well, I guess people would argue it's like when did you come of age and what is your sort of favorite genre?
Yeah.
Not genre, but your sort of favorite years of. Like, is it 70s sci-fi? Is it 60s? Is it 50s? Like some people might say, War of the Worlds is my favorite sci-fi movie,
Sure.
which is also a cool movie. The aliens get killed by by the common cold. And as a kid, that scared the shit out of me, especially when that tentacle with the eyes goes into the basement. I was freaked out,
Yeah.
Or The Fly, the original Fly was a
Yeah.
movie that scared the shit out of me when I was a kid.
Help me,
That's a
help
great
me,
sci-fi movie.
help
Or Cronenberg's Fly, which also
Yeah.
is fucking amazing
Yeah,
if you've never
see,
seen it. But
I
I
mean,
would say
there's-
that's more
and
that's more horror probably, but still.
then I'm also like, well, there's all these other movies too I like to the same extent. So that's a
But if I have to, if you have to pin yourself down, if I have to pin
pick.
myself down, I'd probably have to say it's either Empire Strikes Back or maybe it's probably Empire Strikes Back, or Aliens or Blade Runner or
See,
one of those.
exactly.
It's like yeah,
See, it's difficult.
tough.
I mean, I would say, I can't give you one. I mean, if I absolutely have to, I think I have the luxury of if I absolutely had to, there's a large group that I can choose from, and it would be.
Yeah.
But then again, I'm wondering if everyone's like, well, everybody likes Empire, and that can't be your favorite. Is that everybody's favorite? Maybe so, because like you said, it's a pretty flawless movie. Again, there's no
Well, it's
perfect
everybody.
movies.
I think it's most people's favorite Star Wars movie. I
Yeah.
mean, it should be. If it's not your favorite Star Wars movie, then you're not a real fan.
Well, see, that's the other thing. I'm like, well, Empire. I'm
Okay.
like, well, is that just my favorite Star Wars movie though? Is that really my favorite sci-fi movie? And Blade Runner, but is that? But then Aliens is pretty great, and Alien. If I'm gonna like Alien, see, it's a rabbit hole.
Right, but then Alien is more horror, right?
But the cool thing is we have the luxury, thankfully, of being able to go. I can't just pick one, and that's really, to me, the best part of the whole thing, is that there are these
Right.
great movies out there, these great sci-fi movies, and you don't have to pick one, and
You don't, and
it doesn't have to be, well, this one is better than this one. Well, that doesn't have to be. You can like them all.
You can, and you can certainly like them for different reasons.
Yeah.
I think, as you do, that sci-fi really resonates more for me in a lot of ways when it's about something else besides spaceships, things blowing up, and whatever. There's been some really great sci-fi movies over the years that tackled more social issues and societal issues and things like that. And those are important. But it's also fun to just have stuff blow up too.
Sure.
And that's great.
And I think if
So-
you would have asked me 30 years ago, because I'm that old, I would have a completely different answer and probably would have said, "Oh yeah, this is my favorite movie."
When you were 2? Oh, that's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thanks.
sure.
But I would say, so here's why that is a difficult question to answer, because there are movies that I like now, sci-fi movies, if we're going to narrow it to there are sci-fi movies that I still like now that I've liked since I first saw them, and that is
Right.
a growing number. So there isn't one that I would say that I like more than the others. like I said, I can give you a list of movies that I've seen, I saw from when they first came out or for close to it, that are still movies that resonate with me and I love today. So
Yeah.
picking one of those is difficult, and that list gets added to as years go on. I mean, there's current movies that I don't think it has to be, well, you know, anything after 1990 is a, you know, okay sci-fi movie.
It's shit.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all shit.
I don't think that's true either, because like Solaris, I love the remake of Solaris with George Clooney, but that also led me to really watch the original, which is also a fantastic movie. So
much crazier though.
right.
Yeah.
So is one of those more my favorite because I saw Solaris when it came out and discovered the other one later, you know, well after it came out? I don't think so. So I can't answer that question, I guess is what I'm saying. So
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I kind of go by, if I'm going to pick, I go by the movies posters that are in my office. So see if you can guess what they are.
Blade Runner.
I'll just tell you. Blade Runner, of course. Soylent Green is a poster that I have in my office. Empire Strikes Back are my 3 sci-fi movie posters in my office right now.
There you go.
There you go. Not Star Wars.
Right.
Empire Strikes Back. I also have a poster from Apocalypse Now, which is not a sci-fi movie, although I guess you could say, sure, why not?
Sure, why? Yeah, why not?
Sure, why not?
But I would love to have an
original
original Empire Strikes Back poster in my office.
I do. It's hanging right there.
See, you know, so, but does that make it?
But I kept my Revenge of the Jedi poster in a tube still.
See, there you go. Yeah, because that movie's shit. No, I'm just kidding.
Revenge of the Jedi. Yeah, well, it was Revenge of the Jedi for I was a member of the Star Wars fan club, and so they sent out posters for Revenge of the Jedi, or you could order one or something. I can't remember.
Worth some money.
So I got one, and then they're like, "Oh wait, we changed it because Jedi don't get revenge. Sorry, it's Return of the Jedi. My bad." So yeah, I still got.
Speaking of Starlog, I remember reading the whole thing in Starlog about Revenge of the Jedi and Wrath of Khan, and it was like. Sure. I think it was going to be Revenge of Khan, and then they changed it to Wrath, and it was like, well, then now they changed their move. Damn it! What the hell? So
it's like when you have two meteor movies, like Deep Impact and Armageddon,
exactly.
Right? Or the 2 comet movies. I can't remember which.
Yes.
Which it was, and they were totally different. Obviously, those are sci-fi movies too, but I was not a fan of those. But it's weird. You watch something like I like Danny Boyle as a director.
Right.
And so one of my favorite sci-fi movies of the last 20 years is Sunshine. Have you seen that?
Yeah, that's a great movie too.
Yeah, it's weird though, which I appreciate.
I like
it's
weird
not
movies,
like
though,
it's not like typical. I like Cillian Murphy and Rose Byrne, Chris Evans, and of course Haruki Sanada, one of my favorite actors, is in that. But I like I just enjoyed that movie a lot. It kind of we've talked about it before, I'm sure, Sunshine, but it just kind of veers into horror movie territory towards the end.
Yes.
But
I mean, that's the same thing of like saying, well, yeah, I mean, narrow it down further. What's your favorite Spielberg movie? I can't really give an answer to that either because
favorite Spielberg movie.
They have, I mean, and a lot of it too.
1941.
That's a pretty good movie, but a lot of it too depends on maybe my mood at the time too. It'd be like,
Yeah. I think if you have to pick something from Spielberg's Au revoir, or whatever you want to call it, it's got to probably be E.T.
or Jaws.
I mean, that's
or
Close Encounters. But E.T. is really, if you think about it, no, E.T. though is really him at the height of his powers in a way. It's like he's finally figured out what his shit is about. He's finally figured out how all the tools come into play, and he's dealing with kids and aliens, and
But then Schindler's List is a masterpiece too. So
it is a masterpiece, but it's a different kind of movie.
Right.
It's
but
he's already established. I mean, I guess you could say Saving Private Ryan too, but I'm saying. He can't. His first sort of mastery of the tools, if you will, was with E.T. I think he finally figured his shit out completely during that film. But it's something to take away from Close Encounters or whatever. But I think he was still kind of playing with the thing a little bit. But by E.T. he figured it out. Because if people say what's a Spielbergian movie, they're going to say E.T.
Sure,
right? I mean, it's like E.T. is like the most Spielbergian movie ever made, and so. The fact that it even exists, Spielbergian, is kind of cool if you think about it. And J.J. Abrams tried with Super 8, but he couldn't do it.
I like Super 8, but...
I enjoyed it, but it was too much of J.J. Abrams trying to be somebody else.
Well, that's probably
that he's
true.
not. Yeah. It's a different time now. And when it came out, it was a different time.
Yeah.
It's that kind of thing is probably not going to work as well. But, I would say that the J.J. Abrams Star Trek is not my least favorite Star Trek.
Right.
It's one of my favorite Star Treks. I thought he did a really good job, and all the people in the movie I thought were really good. Everyone was
I
really
like
good.
those.
Chris Pine was a
I
great
like
Kirk.
those movies
You know?
over some of the other Star Trek movies. But
Yeah,
so,
I mean they're better than like Undiscovered Country
right,
or
right.
or whatever. What was the Shatner one? Final Frontier. I can't remember, but
Yeah, Star Trek.
Shatner did the shittiest one for
Right.
sure. But
Yeah. So again, once you start me thinking of, oh, what's my favorite movie, then I'm like, well, this one. Well, no, but this and that. But I really love this. But this was, yeah. So again, I can't answer that.
yeah, and I have to be loyal to Star Wars, but I also
Why do you have to be loyal to Star Wars? Like what you like. You know?
Well, I have to be loyal because it meant a great deal to me, and it still does. And so, but Star Trek also means a lot to me too. So that's why in my top like 5, it's Wrath of Khan, and also I was going to say Escape from New York, but Empire Strikes Back.
But
although Escape from New York, a fine film too.
Exactly. Well, if it meant that much to you, then why is the original Star Wars movie not your all-time favorite? Why is it Empire? Because Empire's a better movie.
Well,
it's okay.
We're talking about sci-fi. We're talking about sci-fi movies. So I would say Star Wars was a movie that blew up everything, that changed the status quo for sure, that changed the world, and changed movie making in general.
It's not your favorite.
And
it's okay though.
It's not my favorite
sci-fi. You can be
movie.
loyal to Star Wars. You can be loyal to a genre, and
Empire Strikes Back is still Star Wars. It clearly says Star Wars. The Empire Strikes Back.
But like the thing, like you can be loyal to Star Wars and not have the original Star Wars movie be your favorite movie. That's okay.
Well,
and it doesn't have any. None of it has to be your favorite. But
it's not even my favorite Star Wars movie.
Right.
It's my second favorite.
So I'm just saying, it doesn't. One doesn't have to be better than the other. It can
right.
Be
That's right.
Like what you like. So
exactly. But if you watch, sometimes just watch Star Wars and then watch Empire and just go, wow, look how everything got so much better.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of my answer when people are like, well, Star Trek Picard is okay, but it's not better than Next Generation or Discovery. I'm like, why does it have to be? It's a completely different story. Happens to have the same.
It absolutely doesn't have to be, but you look at Empire and you look at Star Wars, the technology got better.
Oh,
the
yeah.
acting got better. The story is better. Everything is better, improved. I'm not saying the Star Wars isn't a great movie and it's fun and everything and it's iconic, but George Lucas is not as good a writer as Lawrence Kasdan, for
Absolutely, yes.
which is why Raiders of the Lost Ark is a well-written and crafted film, because Kasdan is a fucking screenwriting genius.
Yes.
So he can craft these stories, and Empire benefited from George not being the director. I think, and he got better. Irving Kershner got much better performances out of everybody, and everyone sort of seemed embarrassed in Star Wars a little bit, except maybe Mark Hamill. He was having fun, but Harrison Ford kind of seemed like he was, not enjoying it as much, maybe. But he's a curmudgeon, so I don't know. Anyway,
He didn't have enough pot at the time. That's fine.
He didn't have enough weed. Yeah, that's really the problem. Is we don't have enough weed.
So basically, I mean, my final thing on it is the question should be, what is your favorite sci-fi movie and why is it Empire Strikes Back? So anyway.
Right, exactly. Or what is your favorite sci-fi movie right now?
Right, yes, exactly.
Today,
Yes.
What is your favorite sci-fi movie? So if you have a favorite sci-fi movie or just a favorite movie in general, you can definitely let us know. I'd be curious to hear from I was going to say constituents, but that doesn't make any sense, from our audience, if you guys have favorite sci-fi movies, and if Joe and I are just totally wrong, and it's Battle Beyond the Stars is the greatest sci-fi movie
I loved
ever.
that as a kid, and that was well before I knew that it was a remake of Magnificent Seven. That's a remake of,
Seven Samurai.
Seven Samurai. But I love all three of those movies, but for different reasons. So there you go. See,
or no one mentioned Last Starfighter. No one mentioned,
I mentioned it.
Oh, you did. Enemy Mine, which is also not a great movie.
Fantastic movies. I mean, so yeah, definitely tell us what your favorites sci-fi movies are. I'm not saying your very favorite. Give us a list of the ones that you really love, and hopefully, maybe it's something that we've never watched before, and I could have a new favorite. So
it's unlikely. Let's be honest. It's probably not too many. I mean, I'm not saying that to be a dick. It's unlikely there's a movie that I haven't seen. I've seen almost every movie that's ever been made, and that's not a boast. It's just at one point, I just made it a point of seeing everything, because I always feel like, and we talked about this before, I always feel like, how do you know what's good if you don't watch all the shit too? So you can't really have a guide. So I was like, give it all to me. I will just hoover it all in myself and enjoy it. So, but I was trying to find one one other movie that I was going to make a joke about, but it's if I have to look it up, it's not funny
No,
anymore.
it's
So
not.
forget it.
Yeah, especially if
It
you
had
have
Molly
to tell us you're
Ringwald
going to
in
make
it.
a joke about it. It's not.
Yeah, I was going to make a joke about this. It's funny.
It's
But I won't,
really
so.
you're gonna
All right,
crack
so
up. It's great.
I was gonna, yeah, it's gonna be super fun. That always makes me laugh though when you're watching something. It's like, oh, that was funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, good one.
Good. Yeah.
That's so funny when you have to say that. It's not.
No.
So anyway, so find the Flickcast on the socials at the Flickcast. We're basically everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Joe and I are on. Joe's at What Joe Writes, and I'm at Chris U or Ulrich Pix if you want to follow me on Instagram. And then we have a Patreon, as I mentioned at the beginning, patreon.com/TheFlickcast.
Yes.
Or the Flickcast, depending on how you're saying it, because apparently my accent's slipping. Is this slipping? So that'd be cool.
Yeah.
And review the show if you would, or give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. But Apple Podcasts, as I often say, is probably the best for the algorithm still.
Yes, please.
That would be helpful. And we appreciate that. So are we missing anything? I'm sure there's lots of movies
I'm sure
that we're missing. Of course, there's lots of movies that we're missing. But anyway, so what's your favorite if you have one? Anything else, Joe?
No, I think we've said enough at this point.
Okay, it's always hard to figure out a way to wrap shit.
I know.
Have you noticed that? The endings are always the hard part. So I'll just say, for Joe Dilworth, I'm Chris Ulrich. That was the Flickcast. Thanks for listening.